Good evening, everybody. My name is Tim Hanna. I'm the school police chief for the Plum Borough School District Police Department. With us tonight is Officer Tyler Kurtz from Plum Borough Police Department and Officer Perry DeLuca. We appreciate them coming. This was a joint effort and collaboration from our department and the Plum Borough Police Department. We wanted to try to have a safety program that we felt would be useful to both the district and the public. We did some research, both myself and the chief and assistant chief, Chief Conley and Assistant Chief Bosseretta with Plum Police Department, and we agreed upon the Be Smart gun safety program. So we brought them in. I want to make everybody aware there's some Be Smart literature over onto the side here if anybody's interested, and the Plum Borough Police Department has also provided complimentary gun locks for anyone that's interested and wants to come up and take them. I'd also like to thank our Director of Technology and Innovation, Mr. Dan Lauletta, for getting all the technology together in the live stream that's going to go out to the public. Dan, thank you so much. With that said, I'd like to introduce Amy Sarno, Kate Ledford, and Sarah Dugan for the presentation.
Thank you so much, Chief Hanna. Good evening. We are here tonight to present Be Smart, which is a public health campaign developed by Everytown for Gun Safety Support Fund to bring together parents and all adults in the community who are concerned about kids, guns, and safety. As Chief Hanna said, my name is Amy Sarno. I am a parent. I am a teacher. I live over in Springdale, just across the river. And I'm the volunteer lead for Be Smart's Pennsylvania team. Tonight I am joined again by our Pittsburgh team's volunteer lead, Kate Ledford, along with Pittsburgh volunteer Sarah Dugan, and our volunteer and also a Plum School District parent, Alyssa Muto. We're so happy to be here tonight. We are all mothers who volunteer our time to gun violence prevention work. We believe strongly in the evidence-based practice of secure firearm storage and its effectiveness on reducing child and teen firearm injuries and deaths, including child and teen suicides. So in order to have this discussion, we do seek to meet on common ground, and we agree on the following. Number one, we all want kids to grow up happy and healthy. I remember a pediatrician once saying to me, children are not supposed to die. And of course, children do die every day, whether it's from accidents that can be prevented, accidents that cannot be prevented, childhood illness, and those kinds of things. But it always has stayed with me. Children are not supposed to die. They are meant to grow up into adulthood. Number two, we each have the right to make responsible decisions about how to protect our homes, our families, and our communities, including whether or not to have a gun in our home. And three, if we can prevent even one child gun death or injury, it is our responsibility to do so. We're not here this evening to talk about laws or policies or politics, so we do set those aside for this discussion. I know that this is an emotional issue, and we may come from different walks of life. Obviously, most of you are parents. Some of you may be gun owners. Some of you may not be. Some of you may have had personal experience with guns, and some of you may have been impacted by gun violence and loss. We do believe that the vast majority, almost all gun owners, want to be responsible gun owners. So we're here today to talk about what all of us, gun owners and non-gun owners alike, can do to make sure that children and teens do not have unsupervised access to guns that would result in injury or death. Before we go further, a crucial part of this framework is breaking the silence around suicide. And I know you did recently have a mental health forum night here in the school district. It's obviously a discussion very much at the forefront of schools right now. So here are some important resources to write down or take a picture of in case you or someone you care about needs help. We also have handout materials and resources on our website with more information about how to get help if you do recognize warning signs. This also includes the suicide prevention hotline. And again, just a small disclaimer, tonight we will be talking obviously about stories of gun violence and suicide. We know living through these experiences is devastating, and hearing about them can be difficult as well. So if at any time you need to step away or just turn off the presentation will be recorded and available. And again, we will be sharing these resources again at the end of the session. In the US, firearms are the leading cause of death for children. So this is a public health crisis. More than 1,800 children under the age of 18 are killed with guns every year. That is an average of 5 children every day. Now, when children are killed with guns, the majority of these deaths, about 54%, are homicides. And that's about 1,000 children per year. But additionally, nearly 700 children die by firearm suicide each year, and 100 or more are unintentionally shot and killed. And we use that term unintentional shootings. These are often going to be reported in the news as accidental shootings. But with this framework, we believe that these are not accidents. Accidents are something that cannot be prevented. So for example, cannot be prevented. So an act of God, rather, is how insurance might bill that term. You know, lightning strikes your car, or a tree and it falls on your car. That's something that you really could not have prevented in any way. These kinds of childhood injuries and deaths absolutely can be prevented, and they shouldn't be happening. So we're here today to talk about how we can prevent tragedies like these. We're also, of course, we are in a school right now, we are going to talk a little bit about school safety, and we believe that school safety really begins in the home. A shocking 4.6 million children in the US live in a household with at least one loaded, unlocked gun. While school shootings and mass shootings typically make the national headlines, almost all child unintentional shooting deaths do occur actually in the home. And the Secret Service found that 3/4 of school shooters acquire their firearm from the home of a parent or a close relative. I want to talk a few minutes specifically about what the consequences of unsecured guns look like in our communities. Let me just turn that for me really quickly. So in Williamsport, this is just from this past August, a 13-year-old boy unintentionally shot and wounded himself in the home. It is not yet known who the firearm belongs to or how the child gained access to it. Police are still investigating that incident. And just this past April, I believe this was our most recent incident of gunfire on school grounds in Pennsylvania. Multiple shots were fired in a school hallway by a student under the age of 15 with a handgun. A student was struck in the leg and injured. The alleged shooter fled the scene, and a juvenile suspect later turned himself in to police. 2 very recent headlines nationwide. These are just from the last 2 days. North Carolina boy, age 2, finds loaded gun in front seat of truck and kills himself. Father faces charges. And a 17-year-old girl was unintentionally shot and killed in Rockville, Tennessee. And of course, many of us remember the tragic incident in Monroeville last year when a 3-year-old was unintentionally killed by her 5-year-old brother, who got a hold of an unsecured gun left on top of the refrigerator in their home. The stats at the bottom of the slide are actually already outdated from when I put this presentation together a couple of weeks ago, at least at the national level. So in 2022, there have actually been at least 238 unintentional shootings by children in the US since January, resulting in 106 deaths and 145 injuries. Our PA stats are still the same there. There have now been actually 151 incidents of gunfire on school grounds nationwide since January, which have resulted in 50 deaths and 122 injuries. Incidents of gunfire on school grounds did not stop with the pandemic. They have actually dramatically increased over the last 3 years. Last year was the deadliest year for gunfire on school grounds. We are on track in 2022 to beat that number. All of these stories and statistics show the fallout of when young people get their hands on unsecured guns. No story is quite the same, but they are all tragic and they all are preventable. But we can all take action in our homes and in our communities to keep our kids safe. Even if you don't have a gun in the home, or if you do and you are already practicing secure storage, there is more that you can do. Together, we can learn to be smart. Kate?
So let's start with S, secure your guns in homes and vehicles. 13 million households with children contain at least one gun, and the majority of children in gun-owning households actually know where the gun is stored. So what do we mean by securing guns? A gun should always be stored securely, which means they're inaccessible to kids, and make sure children are never in the presence of unsecured guns. Remember, hiding a gun is not securing a gun. We know that you may have specific questions about what secure storage looks like in practice. So here are some examples. We also have a handout that you can download at besmartforkids.org under resources. So on the left here, we have a full-size gun safe, and then we've got a lockbox and a vehicle gun safe that can actually be secured to the vehicle. And then the cable lock on the far right, we have those with us to be distributed if you are someone you know needs them. So contrary to popular belief, locking up guns does not prevent gun owners from readily accessing their guns. There is a common myth that storage devices negate the self-defense purpose of owning a gun by putting time-consuming barriers between the gun owner and their means of defense. The reality is that there are many affordable options for secure gun storage that provide owners with the access to guns in a matter of, with access. Sorry, I lost my place. Secure gun storage provides owners with access to guns in a matter of seconds while still preventing access by children and people at increased risk of harming themselves or others. And Sarah.
M asks us to model responsible behavior. Every law-abiding adult has the right to decide whether or not to have a gun in the home, but you can't rely on curious kids not to find the gun. Kids know where their parents store their guns, and more than 1/3 reported handling their parents' guns, many doing so without the knowledge of their parent. That means that nearly 1/4 of parents did not know that their children had handled the gun in their house. It's always an adult's responsibility to prevent unauthorized access to guns, not a curious child's responsibility to avoid guns. Talk to your kids about gun safety, but remember that's a precaution. It is not a guarantee. One study found that young children who go through a week-long gun training are just as likely as children with no training to approach and play with a handgun when they find one. Modeling responsible behavior means that smart adults make sure that kids don't have the opportunity to access guns. That said, you can't control the environment your child is in at all times, so you should teach them not to touch a gun if they come across one, real or pretend, and give them the tools to get out of a dangerous situation and to alert an adult. As an adult, it's our responsibility to do everything we can to prevent them from getting in a dangerous situation to begin with. We also have handouts on best practices for talking to children and teens about guns. We have some with us here tonight. As we have mentioned, there are approximately 4.6 million US children living in a household with at least one loaded, unlocked gun. That's why you need to ask about firearms in other homes your child visits. That's the A in SMART. Okay, audience participation time. So for the parents and caretakers in the room, think about some things you ask about before allowing your child or teen to go to a friend's home or someone else's home. What do you ask about? I'll give an example. Food allergies. Okay. Anyone?
Pets.
Pets. Okay, maybe you have a kid who's afraid of pets or allergies. How about a pool? I have small children, so I still deal with car seats. So if people, or their car seats, alcohol access. Are there adults at home? And then in the past few years, we may have added to that list COVID-19 precautions and vaccinations. You can go. Okay, so asking about guns in the home should be as natural as asking about any other safety issue, but I know it can be awkward. You might try making it a part of your general safety conversation, ask in an email or a text if that feels more comfortable at first. I recently had my first experience asking a new friend about guns in their home. I have asked existing friends, but this is a family that we are just getting to know. So in our text conversation about my daughter going over there for a play date, at the end I just added, hey, I always ask if a house has guns, and if so, if the guns are locked up. Then I waited for a reply, a little nerve-wracking, and it was actually a really lovely reply. The parent said, no guns here, what a great idea to ask. Now, I know not all interactions will be that easy, but I will keep asking because it is that important. Now, conversely, I had to have several conversations with a particular family member about the loaded, unlocked guns in their home, a home that we visit often. In the end, we agreed that I will lock the guns with the free cable locks that we give out through Be Smart, and these are similar to the ones that the police officers provided today. So I will lock the guns when my family visits. It's not ideal, but it's something my family member and I could agree on, and it's something we are both comfortable with when my children are at their home.
Thank you both. I wanted to touch on a storage note here that I think we skipped over. It is also possible that unsecured guns actually increase the likelihood of crime and violence through an increased risk of gun theft. Locking up guns will help to reduce the risk of firearm suicide, unintentional firearm injury, and also help to prevent theft. Did you know that at least 2 guns are stolen every 15 minutes? So it's important to also remember to lock up any guns in your cars as well. That's why they do have those safes that can be attached onto the car floor there. More than half of stolen guns are taken from vehicles. We're now going to talk about our R, which is recognizing the role of guns in suicide. Access to a gun can mean the difference between life and death. For gun owners, as our children get older, we may need to consider taking another look at our storage methods. If you've been using a simple cable lock or just the safe, you may want to think about getting a gun safe and possibly doubling up on the methods there. We all know how curious children and teenagers can be, so as they get older and more resourceful, you will need to act accordingly. And there's a lot of response and time, well, I know my child, we've had all these conversations. They know not to touch the guns, or they do know how to handle them properly because they hunt with me or whatever it may be. They have friends who are coming into the home as well. You don't know the conversations that are being held in those homes, if any. You may not, especially as the children get older, always be there supervising them. So it's really important to think about this. And of course, if you know that you have a loved one in distress, you may want to consider temporarily removing a gun from your home. So it's important to consider that firearm suicide is uniquely lethal compared to other methods of suicide. 90% of suicide attempts using a gun do end in death. Obviously, it's instantaneous. Half of suicides in the US are gun suicides. 70% of people who survive a suicide attempt will actually never attempt suicide again. So if you consider temporarily removing a gun from your home, how can you do that? Where can you bring it? Well, local law enforcement may be willing to temporarily store your firearms. Some licensed gun dealers or gun ranges may be willing to temporarily store your guns. You could also temporarily store your guns in the home of a friend or family member. And of course, to manage risk for them, you would want to lock any guns that you transfer, not provide the key or the code. So again, many people who attempt suicide do not actually die, and many of them are not going to actually attempt it again unless they use a gun. Again, 90% of suicide attempts with a gun result in death, which is a much higher fatality rate than any other means of self-harm. And this contributes to the fact that 41% of child suicides involve a gun. And that's the one that gets me every time. I've done this presentation now for almost 5 years, and that's the one that really gets me every time. That 41%, nearly half of the children and teenagers who do complete suicide use a firearm that they find in their home. The National Youth Survey conducted by the CDC showed that 20% of high school students had seriously considered attempting suicide within the last year. One study showed that 41% of adolescents in gun-owning households report having easy access to the guns in their home. Research shows that secure firearm storage is associated with a decreased risk of child firearm suicide and all child gun deaths and injuries. One study found that households that locked both firearms and ammunition were associated with a 78% lower risk of self-inflicted firearm injuries and an 85% lower risk of unintentional firearm injuries among children compared to those that lacked neither. Another study estimated that if half of the households with children that currently contain at least one unlocked gun would switch to locking all of their guns, that 1/3 of youth gun suicides and unintentional deaths could be prevented, saving an estimated 251 lives in a single year. As mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, again, here are resources to write down or take a picture of in case you or someone you care about needs help. Some signs to look for when concerned that a loved one may be suicidal include prolonged sadness and depression, changes in mood and behavior, hopelessness, sleeping too much or too little, although I'm sure that is very difficult to gauge with our teenagers, withdrawing from others, isolation, aggression or agitation, increased alcohol or drug use, and of course talking about killing themselves. And again, we have handout materials tonight, and they're also available on our website. Additionally, if you are a survivor of gun violence, we have resources available at momentsthatsurvive.org. So we finally get to the T, and that stands for tell. And that really is the power of being smart, is sharing the Be Smart message. This is the way we will save lives, by spreading awareness. So I'd love for everyone to take just a few minutes and think about who you are going to tell to be smart. As parents and community members, we can commit to securing our firearms and asking about the presence of guns in places we and our children visit. As Plumboro School District has shown us, schools can commit to sharing the Be Smart message on district websites and hosting community presentations just like this one. Sharing secure storage and suicide prevention graphics and resources on social media accounts is also very helpful, especially at crucial times throughout the year, like back to school season, the holidays, and our upcoming National Injury Prevention Day, which is on November 18th. Hundreds of school districts across the U.S. have actually taken it a step further and included the secure storage information in their student handbooks, or annually sending home information, and sometimes they even pass proclamations at the school board or community level to formally adopt secure storage education policies. We estimate now that well over 2 million families have heard the Be Smart message directly from communication from their school districts. So how will you commit to Be Smart today? Our volunteers do everything we can to spread awareness of this program. We partner with organizations like the VA and Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, and even gun ranges and gun shops, along with churches, libraries, and other advocacy groups to give presentations, provide materials and gun locks, and table at local community events. We are always looking for interested adults to train and work with us. Obviously, we love partnering with the police. They are absolutely the experts in hopefully preventing these kinds of injuries and deaths. We love working with veterans. This is a top concern for them, particularly because of the issue of firearm suicide among veterans, and also teachers, of course, make great presenters, especially those retired ones who have maybe a little bit more time than our current teachers. So that is really it. And we can take time for questions. I don't know how many we would have, but to learn more, you can obviously come and speak to us one-on-one after the presentation. You can email us at bsmartpa@gmail.com or bsmartpittsburgh@gmail.com. You can also text the word SMART to 64433. And that's it. We can take any questions. And other than that, we really, really thank you for your time. Hello to anybody who's online or watching this. And it was great being here tonight. Any questions? I think that's it. Oh, nice. Thank you.